All right, so you're joined from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., by my man, Joe Briggs, who was so humble, one of the guys who just works at Amazon. We got a room full here with us at Velma Jackson High School for our business law class, and we're recording this for all of our friends in Madison County schools. My good friend April Majors over at Ridgeland High School, my friend Jennifer Cody at the Academic Options Center, Madison Central High School, Germantown High School, and our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule for us today.
No worries. I'm so happy to be here. My dad is from Indianola, Mississippi. So whenever the state of my dad's birth calls me to do something, I'm more than happy to answer that call.
And I was actually born not far from Indianola in Greenville, so that's pretty cool that your dad's a fellow Delta person. So that's awesome. Now, we obviously want to talk about all the great things you do at Amazon and all the things you have on deck, and on all the great things that our kids can learn from all the things you guys do. But let's give us a little background. Graduate of TCU at the McNeely School of Business there in Fort Worth, degree in marketing, and then graduated from Florida State and Florida A&M with Juris Doctorate. So just take us through that timeline and a little bit about your college
Mhm.
background.
Cool. So I'm one of those unique people who did not play sports most of my life. In fact, I came to football my senior year of high school. It turns out being 6'5" and weighing about 255 pounds is a good attribute to have when you're a first-time football player. And so I turned out to be all right. I had a bunch of schools recruiting me to come play football for them, but I'd had my eyes set on TCU since my sophomore year because their business school was just that good. I was in Future Business Leaders of America. I'm sure you guys have an FBLA chapter there at Jackson High School. Well, I had been president of my FBLA chapter since my freshman year. I'd also
Wow.
been a sentinel in my FFA chapter because I thought that agribusiness was what I wanted to get into after I got out of high school. My grandfather, who I was raised with, and my father were both farmers and caretakers and migrant farmers as well. And so that had been a passion of mine. How do I marry up the farming side of my life with the business side of my life and figure out a future for it? So going to TCU because they had a ranch management program and a business school made sense to me, and I thought that I'd be able to sneak over to the ranch management program, learn some things about business and agronomics, and then also get a good business degree from TCU. Turns out that TCU also had a pretty good football program, and we had a bunch of kids who thought that we could turn that football program that had kind of been on a lull into the football program that it was decades ago. So TCU had not had a winning season in back-to-back seasons in about 50 years when we came in as a freshman class. And we were the first class in that about 50 years to come in and have back-to-back winning seasons. And then the first class to also take the school to a bowl game in 1998 when we played against the University of Southern California and beat them handily in the Sun Bowl in El Paso, Texas. And so I was one of those kids that was standing on the stage holding a trophy from a what would be considered BCS championship game back in my heyday, and thought that the next step for me was logically going to the NFL. I had played some really good football with some really good people. Some of them you might have heard of, like LaDainian Tomlinson, who was one of the running backs on that team that I blocked for, who's been now inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame for his running ability at TCU behind us offensive linemen, and also the Pro Football Hall of Fame because he went on to have a
Yeah.
storied career. After that, uh, not only the business school degree from TCU, but also the desire to be better led me to some very interesting places. I'm sure we'll get into some of that a little bit here as well. One other point that I'd make here while talking about my education was that yes, I did go to Florida A&M University. I actually earned a master's degree from Florida A&M University
Okay.
in poli-sci and public administration with a concentration in data analytics. Then went on to Florida State to graduate with my law degree focused on business and finance. So I graduated and worked for a public finance law firm. Thought I was going to be a tax lawyer for a long time, but that fate had another decision for me.
Yeah, but that just goes to show you that we've had a few guests that have had law degrees, but just because you have a law degree doesn't mean you necessarily have to be a litigator. It doesn't even mean you have to be an attorney. A lot of companies are looking for people with law degrees to work in areas like finance, to work in areas like business. So, as somebody that has a Juris Doctorate that's not an attorney, how could going to law school benefit someone who really doesn't want to be an attorney?
Well, so that's part of the journey as well, right? Like, so first part of the journey though was that I was a practicing attorney. After I graduated from law school, I got the call, or actually before I graduated from law school, I got the call to do a fellowship in the United States Senate for the banking committee under my senator from the state of Florida. He had read a paper that I wrote while I was in law school about some issues that he thought were very germane to his jurisdiction of the banking committee. And so he hired me as his fellow and his subject matter expert over banking issues and tax issues in his office for a little bit. And while I was working in the United States Senate as his Senate legal fellow, I actually got a call from a headhunter that was recruiting for a small entity called the NFL Players Association. They were actually looking for a lawyer who actually knew about football, but also knew about finance. And so I took a detour, left my career that I thought was going to be me being a finance lawyer, and went to the NFL Players Association and served as a lawyer at the NFL Players Association for about 16 years.
Wow.
During my time at the NFL Players Association, I ended up negotiating and working on the negotiating team for three collective bargaining agreements: the 2006 collective bargaining agreement, the 2011 collective bargaining agreement, and our 2020 collective bargaining agreement as well. And so over the course of that time period, we went through about $200 billion worth of revenue, a
Wow.
little over $100 billion worth of player contracts, and a bunch of very fun times. 17 Super Bowls, yeah, a lot of playoff games, a bunch of games in places like London, uh, games in places like Brazil and Mexico, um, a bunch of very interesting and fun experiences. And so it allowed me to marry up my passion for football as a former player, my desire to do business, along with my understanding of cultural norms around how those two things intersect together. And that's one of the ways that I think people should be thinking about how they not only get their degrees, but how they can use those degrees to be better about what their life could be.
Yeah, and the best
And so
part about
now,
it, not getting hit in the head.
and not, well, even that, right? Like, so being a lawyer that actually worked on most of the concussion stuff on our side of the table, starting in 2008 and 2009. Because in addition to being counsel at the NFL Players Association, I was also the head of government relations. So you'll probably, if you go back and look at some of the footage of those hearings around concussions that happened in the United States Congress, you'll probably see me sitting back like one row back behind the players that were testifying about those things. And there's some probably, maybe I'll try to find some of the old pictures and video clips and I'll send them to you afterwards.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, obviously, you're now with Amazon, and you just and your title was so long I couldn't even say all of it. You said I'm just a guy that works at Amazon, and Amazon has a great presence here in Mississippi with both AWS and a distribution center. So Amazon definitely has this footprint here, and a lot of young people say, "Look, I'd love to go work for Amazon." They see the stuff on TV, and there is an incredible opportunity in the company to move up and to really find your footing in a great company. And I know you spoke so highly of Amazon on several of the clips you've had. But as somebody that literally sits at a table that hires people, you have to decide how who fits in best in the area that you're hiring in. And I think something that is lost on young people of this entire generation is how to present themselves, how to be able to walk in a room, walk in a room and introduce yourself, being able to have a solid resume and talk about what's on it, be able to sell yourself, be able to sell an idea, and then use all of that to contribute to a company. So, as somebody that's been sitting on that side of the table now for several years, what are some things that you see that people that are coming into your company kind of need to improve on?
Well, While I also work at Amazon, I'm also a professor at Georgetown University at night, and I see a lot of young people that come through my classroom. I will say something a little bit different. I think they have all of the tools that are necessary to be very successful in their future. They just need calibration, right? And calibration is a bit different, right? Because as you know, and as I know from being business people who've had jobs for years, you understand the environment that you're going into, and then you're able to calibrate how you show up in that environment so that you either fit or you stand out in a way that makes you better, right? And so I want young people to start thinking through how are they researching the places that they want to go to make sure that they can fit and then learn how to stand out. At Amazon, we call that bar raising. So people hired into Amazon, they say that it's a very tough process. But the actuality of that process is that we want to hire people that are better than at least 50% better than the people that are already here, so that you being better than us helps us raise the bar. And as you know, the younger people coming into these environments have more new information, have probably more
Yep.
technological skill than, and they also have other things that they can offer to us, old people who've been sitting behind desks for too long. And so that means that they already have all of the stuff built into them, the confidence, the know it, the knowledge, and also the skills to do many of the jobs that we're looking for in the future, and that maybe we haven't even thought up yet. So now comes the calibration part of it, right? Like, how are we making sure that they're picking up the right books, listening to the right audiobooks, learning from the right people, teachers like yourself and other teachers that are in the high schools there in Mississippi, so that they can help with that calibration of how they can fit into this new environment, this new world that they're in. That includes learning from good leaders, making sure that they understand the ethical and moral obligations of participating in a society, and then understanding how we are all in this together.
Absolutely. And then on top of that, and I agree. It's never been a lack of intelligence. It's never been a lack of talent. But it's just a matter of finding a way to show that you're the best, being able to way to communicate that you're the best. Monday, and when we get done here in a little while, we're going to be working on presentations that they're going to give in front of the class. And they want, and I know I can speak for every other teacher. They just want to get so mad that they're up talking, but that's the way you do business. That's the way you're able to go in and set yourself apart. Being able to articulate a thought, being able to be in a room that people can have no idea what you're talking about, but you can be able to explain it. So how important are those type of skills as kids look to move up in business?
Well, those skills are important in life, right? Like there's encoding, decoding as a part of communication, critical parts of communication. And sometimes when you say something, maybe it's encoded in a way that the person on the other side of that communication can't decode. And so learning the environment, learning how to encode messages in a way that they can be decoded by the person that you're trying to communicate with becomes very important. And I know those seem like highly technical terms, like maybe that's something that we would be talking about in a computer programming class. But I think if you think about everything that you're doing through that same STEM-based lens, like it'll be very helpful to you. Maybe there's just a miscommunication because the thing that you're saying to the person who you're saying it to, they just can't understand it or decode it in a way that makes sense to them. And so if you have a computer language that you type into some program, that program then is unable to decode that or understand the language that you're typing, then that program's not going to work. Same thing with humans, right? Like if you go into your classroom, if you go into your Spanish classroom and start speaking French to your Spanish teacher, that language that you're speaking may be absolutely correct. But if the Spanish teacher is looking for something else, you're going to miss whatever grade it is that you hope to get in that class. And so, again, I go back to calibration. Like, how do you understand what environment that you're walking into and how you can apply the intelligence that you already have to that environment that you're walking into so that you can maximize the success potential that you have? That becomes the most important
Absolutely.
thing to teach to me.
Absolutely. Now, one thing I wanted to hit on, and they're handing me some really good questions. But one thing I wanted to hit on, and I had no idea about your football background, and I think that's super cool. But I have tons of kids that have dreams of playing college football, playing in the NFL, and we encourage all of them to work to get to what they want to accomplish. But as somebody that has been
Mhm.
around hundreds and hundreds of NFL players, how many of them are able to stop playing and then never work again because they made so much money that they're set for life?
Well, we did a pretty good job in our last couple collective bargaining agreements, so probably that number's a little bit higher now than it was in the late 90s and early 2000s. But
Yeah.
you start thinking about it like this. The average NFL career is about 3.5 years. Most NFL players enter their NFL career at around 24, 25 years old, and some even earlier at maybe 22, 23. So by the time you're 27 years old, you are now out of your earning cycle. Not just out of your NFL career, but you're out of your earning cycle. And so the money you made during those 3.5 years has to last you for the rest of your life if you don't want to work again. And not that many guys are positioned well enough so that they can have enough compensation to last them the rest of their lives. If you think about it like this, a guy that gets $10 million a year playing football, it's a pretty good number. But a guy that makes $10 million playing football, immediately he's losing about 50% of that through taxes, both state and federal, through agent fees, and through other costs that are related to him being in the NFL, like having a house in the city that he's playing in and a house in the city that he's from, and then all the people that he made promises to going into the NFL. That $5 million a year that he was actually taking home becomes like $1 million really quick, right? And so now, if he has some other issues that happen, like you do a helmet to helmet contact, get a fine while you're on the field, get a flag thrown, and the commissioner fines you as a result of that. Your money keeps dwindling down and down. And so now by the time that 27-year-old is out, oh, by the way, he also has to live. He also has to fly to Miami to hang out for spring break with his boys, and he has to pay for them all to come. And a private jet costs about $200,000. And so now that $5 million that was from the $10 million minus the taxes goes down to about $1 million, which goes down to a few $100,000. And so now you got a few $100,000 in the bank, but you're 27 years old and you can't live until you're 67 when you're about to pull down your Social Security off three, $400,000. And
Wow.
so there's this perfect storm that kind of wraps around them, which is why it becomes really important for you to understand how to make sure you're calibrating everything in your life. Calibrating your spending, calibrating your expectations, but also calibrating your understanding about what it is your job actually is. A better way to look at it, especially with a business and law class, is that your NFL career is actually a way to form your venture capital for the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
The money you earn during your NFL career is actually what should catapult you to the rest of your life.
Yeah, and you know, I'm actually friends with a couple former NFL players. I got to mention Sean Woodson since I'm wearing the Jackson State shirt. Played at Jackson State, played a couple years in the NFL, played for 8 years in Canada. And he said, "Look, I made a good living, but I was able to invest that. I was able to send my kids to college, and now he's a fire captain, and he uses that football background to be successful at that." Another famous one from Mississippi is Sammy Winder, who played 10 years in the NFL, played in two Pro Bowls, played in or one Pro Bowl, two Super Bowls. I'm good friends with his daughter, and she said, "Look, he makes way more running his trucking company than he did in the NFL, and he used all his NFL earnings to invest in that and to start that company." So I agree 100%. Use that money to start a successful business to make smart investments, and then you're right. It is amazing how much easier you can live.
And one other point that I don't want to slide past is that less than 1% of all the people who play college, who play high school football, will ever make it to the NFL, right? And so that other 99% of folks along that path trying to get to the NFL, you better be sure you know that is what you want to do, what you'll want to do after your football days are over, because every football player will have the same end to their career. They will be invited away from the locker room. Someone will come by and pick up their helmet and tell them this is the last time that you'll be wearing pads, and they don't know when that day is going to come to them, but it will come for every player out there. There's no player that's ever played past what 45, 46 years old, and those guys are only kickers. Like I said, most
Yeah.
guys barely make it to 3 years.
Yeah, yeah. I always say they get promoted to fan.
Right.
Is always the way it goes. Now, before I get to their questions, there's one last thing I want to talk about, and I just think this is interesting, and I like to ask everybody that's done this the same thing because you went to a great PWI at TCU for your undergrad, and you went to an incredible HBCU for your master's. So, as somebody that went to both and understands the importance of both, because I think they both offer great pros that kind of offset each other. So, as somebody that went to a PWI and an HBCU, what are some things that they both can offer as these kids start making college decisions coming out of high school?
That's a good question. I think that there's some unique differences between the environments at a PWI and an HBCU. Mostly the ability to find those people who can encode and decode messages in the same way that you can, but also the services that those universities provide. So there's some things that TCU did really well that I didn't see at FAMU, but there are a lot more things that I saw at FAMU that I did not see at TCU. Things like a family feel that happened every week, things like how they had an understanding of their unique place in history, not only the history in the state of Florida, but the history in the United States of America
Yeah,
and this
absolutely.
interesting fabric of the USA. And because of that, I think that the value of an HBCU sometimes seems to be overpowering to some folks. But I would say lean into it if that's what you need during that moment. And also, just in a moment of complete candor, right? Like the things and people that I saw at Florida A&M University have had a much bigger impact on parts of my life than the folks that I met at TCU. What do I mean by that? My wife also went to FAMU, right? And so while I had great experiences at TCU, my wife has been my business partner in our life and in the way that we have built a life for ourselves here in the District of Columbia and for my son here in the District of Columbia for the better part of the last 20 years. And she's
Wow.
also a product of Florida A&M University. Also has a law degree, but she has a law degree from the University of Miami. And for anyone who asks, no, we do not watch the Florida State Miami game together. We've been together for almost 20 years. And we've only watched that game together once in 2005 when we had tickets to go to the game, and she wore a Miami shirt in Florida State's stadium, and we haven't watched that game together since.
Wow. Yeah, I don't think, a lot of people don't understand how big that one was at that time. That was one of the biggest rivalries in the country and still a great one. But, one thing I always say, and I know they get sick of me saying this, but you hear HBCU, historically black does not mean exclusively black because with us being an all black community, I have so many kids say, I don't want to go to HBCU. I've gone to a black school my whole life. Well, just because it's a HBCU doesn't mean that it's a snapshot of everything you've been around. You have people from all over the world. You have people from all walks of life there at the university. So they may look like you, but they're not all going to think like you. They're not going to all have the same background. So I'm a huge proponent of at least considering HBCUs as kids make college choices and really look at what is the best fit for them and to not exclude anything from your college aspirations.
I agree with you 1000%.
Now, I do have some questions from the students, and these are really good. So, this first one is Zayden Reed. She's in 10th grade, and she's in ninth grade. She's standing here looking at me crazy. She's in ninth grade, and she asks, what are the most rewarding aspects of your work at Amazon?
One of the most, I'm sorry, something was happening with my phone. One of the most rewarding things that's part of my work at Amazon is knowing that we will be delivering those beautiful brown boxes to the houses that make joy happen year round. It's almost like being a version of Santa Claus, right? Like the customer obsession is one of our leadership principles at Amazon, and we are 100% obsessed with our customers getting not only the experience that they need when they're shopping with Amazon.com, but also with the product that they ordered from us, making sure that it's a frictionless process for them to be able to go on our website, order what they want, and then get the thing that they expected when they came to the website to get to their home. And I mean that earnestly, right? Like the reviews that you put on Amazon of products that you did not like, and when they ask you questions about products that you return, all those things inform Amazon's business practices behind the scenes because we're so obsessed with our customers and their experience.
Absolutely. I like this one. This is Christopher Maxwell. He's in 10th grade, and he asked, what made you choose a career at Amazon after being in law?
I thought that it would be an interesting switch between not only sports but tech, right? The technology that's available at Amazon is next level. And also because while working in sports was very interesting from a popularity process and standpoint, there were many opportunities to work at a company that was that small. Were limited, right? Like the opportunities to go in, there were only 115 people that worked at the NFL Players Association. There were only so many places that your career could go. And so when I looked at the long-term trajectory of my career, I thought that I had done all the things that I wanted to do, and I was looking for a new challenge. Well, Amazon is a little bit different. There are 1.5 million people that work at Amazon. They have offices all over the world. And so having the ability to work in a company to go be a small, a regular sized fish in a much larger pond was just really intriguing to me. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to go work at Amazon.
Absolutely. I got time for two more. I like this one. This is Kamani Wright. He's in ninth grade, one of our champion power lifters here. And he asked, "What has been the hardest obstacle you've had to overcome in your life?"
So I didn't really talk about this, but after after I played in that last game at TCU, I go through the process of thinking that I might get invited to the combine. I didn't get invited to the combine. I go through my workouts. I make myself available to NFL clubs, and I had a couple of NFL clubs that were interested in me. And so I made a promise to my mom that I would finish my college degree before I made a decision. And because I was an undrafted free agent, I can decide when I sign my contract which club I was going to go to, which made more sense to me. And so I graduated from TCU on May 15th, 1999, and then I got into a car accident on May 16th, 1999, and that
Wow.
ended my football career. I literally
Wow.
had two football contracts for two different NFL clubs that were waiting on me to sign on that Monday morning, but I got into the car accident on that Sunday night, and I had to figure out what the transition was for me from playing football to what I was going to do next. And luckily, I had spent some time writing out my game plan, so I knew my NFL career was going to be about 3 years. And then after my NFL career, I was going to use the money from my NFL career to pay for me to go to law school. And so I just had to find something to replace the NFL with, and I chose to do that by not only going to Florida A&M University, but working at Florida A&M University as well. And so while I was in grad school earning my master's degree, I also served as the deputy chief of staff to the president of the university and got
Oh,
a chance
wow.
to ingrain myself into not only the culture of that school, but the culture of HBCUs as a whole, while learning as much as I can to try to make the place a better place.
Yeah, and that's why networking is so important. Whether you go to college or not, find people that can be mentors that you can learn from. Because you could have the greatest grades in the world, but if people don't know who you are, it's all for nothing. So that's a really cool path. All right, I got time for one more. This is Edward Flowers. He's in 10th grade, one of our baseball players, and he asked, "What are the biggest mistakes you've seen people make in business?"
Well, the biggest mistake that I've seen a lot of people make is thinking that they know everything. I wake up every day knowing that I don't know everything and hoping that I'm going to learn something. And I'm usually right. Sometimes the thing that I learn is from my 9-year-old son. Sometimes it's from a person who's doing $60 billion worth of business with one of our subsidiaries here at Amazon. It could be something that I learned from opening up what used to be Twitter, now is X, and seeing somebody post something that day. But every day, and hopefully every day for the rest of my life, I'm going to be a lifelong learner. I know I don't know everything and that there's so much more for me to learn. And hopefully you'll take that piece of advice from me as well. You don't know everything. I'm sure you hear your parents say that every day. You might even see your teachers say that to you all the time that you don't know everything. So when you think that you do, just realize that you don't.
Absolutely. Well, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for taking some time for us. But before we go, just one thing I wanted to hit on, and I know you recently last year spoke at the Black Men Excel event, and I just think that's so important. And I know they get sick of me talking about this, but it cannot be talked about enough because I have one young lady in here with me today, but the rest of the room I have young men. And one thing I say is that we always need more successful black men in our community because we've lost way too many to gang violence. We've lost way too many to incarceration. We've lost way too many for different reasons. But there is so much intellect, so much talent, so much skill in these young men. So why do they need to realize that it is so important that they are needed to be successful in our communities and successful in our businesses and successful in our homes and successful in our entire world?
Well, you can't drive a car as easily if it only has three wheels on it, right? And so all of the wheels not only need to be on the car, but they need to be turning in the right direction in order for that car to go as far as it needs to go. And sometimes I think we forget that. We think about ourselves as individuals and we don't think about ourselves as a part of that community that you can often find represented by that same car. And so we pull ourselves away from community and now the car, maybe it continues down the street, but obviously continuing down the street with three wheels is not as good as four, and definitely with two wheels is not as good as four. And so I want you to think about yourselves as young black men that are part of a community. You are part of this system. You are very much needed to get this car, this community where it's going. And so instead of thinking about pulling yourself away because you're not part of the community, lean in with the community. Rotate positions. Figure out how, instead of allowing someone else to be a leader, maybe it's your turn to step up to the plate and be a leader, right? Like all of those things are very, very important. And also, again, quite candidly, I need you. Because at some point, I'm going to come back to Mississippi and I'm going to need someone who's going to be there for me, making sure the lights stay on. Because you are taking care of the community that many of us have left to move to other parts of the country, or their kids have left to move to other parts of the country. As I mentioned earlier, before we started recording, I think my dad is from Indianola, Mississippi, and I have a bunch of family in Greenwood, Greenville, and also Itabena, like still to this day. And so all of those people, those very intelligent people, um, need people like the students that are in your class, the young men that are in your class, and young men throughout the school district who will see this video, stepping up to the plate and being a part of our community because they are very important and integral to our entire community's success. And one last thing I'll plug about Amazon, I work on the corporate side, but we have fulfillment centers all over the place as well. And those jobs at the fulfillment center, if that's a route that you choose to go, pay really well. But they also allow you to do something called the Career Choice Program. This is a program that, while you're working at Amazon, allows you to take classes at colleges and certain universities, and Amazon will pay for it because we realize that you may not work for us forever. But you being a better person when you leave us than when you started with us means that the community got better, means that everyone around that community got better, means that the car is able to move faster, and then we're able to get to the future that we're trying to create together better. I would also say that if you go on awsskills.com, if you just Google AWS Skills, Skills Center, they're all kind of free courses that you could take right now while you're in high school to get certificates in cloud certification, cloud practitioner, all these things that you can be skills that you can learn right now, but also jobs that you can get right now that pay five and some even six figures while you're in high school without ever having to step foot on a college campus, just by enhancing and upskilling your knowledge about computers, about internet, and about the future that we're creating. And so, to those young black men that are out there watching this video, take advantage of the things that are around you to level up, not just for yourself, but for your family and ultimately for the communities that we will both continue to sit in.
Absolutely. And the AWS is getting ready to open their facility here right down the road in Ridgeland. So, really big opportunity there. So, I agree. But I know you got to get to your meeting. I appreciate you so much getting this in your schedule. And it's just so great to hear from a fellow person that has Delta ties as just like myself. But again, we thank you so much for joining us, Joe Briggs, all the way from Washington, D.C., there in the corporate of Amazon. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank y'all. Y'all have a great day. Joe Briggs, ESQ, anywhere you want to find me.
All right. Appreciate it, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
See ya.